So, Adrian, what do you think is the best kind of sandwich?
Oh, wow. Is this like a real question? You really
Yeah.
want to know?
What would you say is the best sandwich?
Probably like a turkey, cheddar cheese, maybe some pepper jack, just standard lettuce, tomato, mayo, mustard, onion, kind of all that good stuff. Maybe on
Nice.
sourdough or Dutch crunch if you're shopping at Mr. Pickles.
Sourdough is always the way to go for me. That sounds good, though. You're making me hungry now, actually. I don't know why I brought this question up then. I'm a sucker for French dips myself.
I did
absolutely
know
love
that
them.
about you. Yeah.
Also, I would also throw in there tight second would be like a Cubano or a
Okay.
Cuban sandwich. Yeah, absolutely
Sure.
delicious.
Wow, by Cubano, I didn't connect Cuban.
Well,
Thank you for-
some restaurants call it a Cubano and some call it a Cuban sandwich. So I don't doubt your intelligence. Anywho, welcome back to the Drive Back Podcast. My name is Garrett,
Hey, I'm Adrian.
and today we're going to be taking a look at movie trivia. This is a little bit different than our typical podcast episodes. We thought this idea sounded super fun, but we have a lot of trivia to get through, so we're going to have to go pretty quick here. The idea is we're going to look through all of the movies that we've covered through episodes 1 through 49, and then next week we'll do the same thing from episodes 50 through 99. And then every 25 episodes, to keep it a little bit easier, we'll do a check-in with some hilarious, fun, maybe some interesting trivia. So we've got quite the list here today, Adrian. I hope you're ready to learn some fun facts.
I am. I just was doing the math. I guess if we do it every 25 weeks, we basically do 2 a year.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So maybe
That seems infrequent.
in the grand scheme of things, yeah.
Maybe we'll find a way to just plug in some kind of trivia episode or something.
We'll find a way.
Just plug in, yeah.
But what do you say we get right underway with this?
Let's do it.
So, back in our very first episode, we covered the film Artemis Fowl, which released on Disney Plus during the start of the pandemic. I don't want to say height of the pandemic. But did you know that originally Harvey Weinstein was a producer on the film, but following the disclosure of his sexual misconduct, Disney removed Weinstein as the producer and terminated its production partnership with the Weinstein Company?
As right as that is, I feel like it may have been a better film under the Weinstein Company.
I thought it was fitting because, Weinstein fucked up all those people's lives and Disney fucked up Artemis Fowl. So it was a fitting match. I'm just saying. But moving on, in episode number 3, we covered My Neighbor Totoro as the first of 2 films that episode. Initially, the movie did not do well at the box office and did not break even until about 2 years after the release, when stuffed dolls based on the King Totoro character hit the shelves.
Interesting. It's so funny that that's true because it's such like a household film for so many people now that I can't even imagine it not being successful. That's really, really funny.
Right? Like, I believe I also read when I was looking through the facts that it was released alongside Grave of the Fireflies, which is a much different tone movie.
I don't know what movie that is.
That's also a Miyazaki movie about World War II and a brother and sister.
Oh, interesting.
While the United States are firebombing Japan. Yeah, quite different.
Yeah, very much so.
But the other movie we covered that episode was Seven Samurai, one of the classics of the podcast we both really loved. Originally, Akira Kurosawa designed a registry of all 101 residents of the village, creating a family tree that helped his extras build their characters and relationships to each other.
Interesting.
I just like the idea that he built this world going, yes, and this man fucked this woman and made you. Now build your relationships with other characters. That's actually, it's a pretty cool fact.
Yeah, that is fun.
Moving on, in episode number 4, we covered Da 5 Blood, Spike Lee's newest film that was a Netflix exclusive. According to an interview with Giancarlo Esposito, who played Moff Gideon in The Mandalorian, I think it was Gus in Breaking Bad, known for playing villains, he was originally in talks to be cast alongside Samuel L. Jackson, Denzel Washington, and John David Washington. However, due to scheduling conflicts, it fell apart.
That's very interesting. Yeah, I love John David Washington, and that would have been a crazy cast. To include him, that would have been amazing.
Well, especially playing the character that was the son of the other character, like that's just perfect.
Yeah.
So there's an alternate universe where that movie exists, and I am all for it. Next up, in episode number 6, we covered 2 films. The first was V for Vendetta, which we remember that one very well. I think we both really liked that movie. Hugo Weaving, who played V, had to re-record all of his lines because the mic in his mask didn't work.
Interesting. Do you think they realized that probably after like 2 takes?
I just imagine like they get back from the dailies and they're just like, oh no, it'll
like
be
the year of filming.
it'll be better tomorrow, right? Like just like consistently mindset, like it'll work out tomorrow. I swear.
That's pretty impressive though, because it definitely. Obviously the audio engineering is fine because it fits in perfectly. But he did a great job. If he had to go back and watch and record at the same time, kind of thing, it fits perfectly.
And in timeline too, like with year wise, like there are people that have masks now, or back when COVID was much more serious than it is right now, who had masks that had microphones in them so you could hear what they were saying, and it sounded all right. And this is that takes place a couple years after this, so it makes sense that technology could be there, and it would sound as good as it did in the movie. So,
yeah.
That very same episode, we covered The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, otherwise known as Reverse Brad Pitt. In that episode, we covered that movie, and it was David Fincher's first PG-13 film.
Really?
Yeah, the guy that did Seven and Fight Club and Alien 3, his first PG-13 film was The Curious Case of Benjamin Button.
And you know what? He hit it out of the park. No hesitation on that. Did a great job.
Yeah, it was a pretty great movie. In episode 7, we covered Netflix's exclusive The Old Guard. With a budget of $70 million, this was the first time that a black woman has directed a big-budget comic book movie adaptation.
Nice.
So, wasn't a lot of fun facts about that movie, like funny ones, but a really cool fact nonetheless, and hopefully she gets more work.
Yeah.
Episode 9, we covered 2 films. The first was Pacific Rim, which I believe was your choice. Approximately 100 kaijus and 100 Jaegers were designed for the film, but only a fraction of them made them into the movie. Every week, the filmmakers held a vote for their favorites.
Interesting. That's a very fun fact. That is really, really cool.
Literally the fact, like, this one's so cool, we're putting it in.
Yeah, that's what a fun thing for the whole crew to, like, vote on and have it come to life and everything. Oh. Another fun fact is when we recorded that podcast episode, I watched the wrong Pacific Rim.
I remember.
And we had this whole initial period where Garrett was like, we started the podcast, I was talking about the movie, and Garrett had to stop it and go, "You watched the second one, didn't you?" And I went, "Yes. Isn't that what we were supposed to do?" And he said no. But luckily, I had seen the first one so many times that I was able to talk to it appropriately and everything. But yeah, a fun fact, inside baseball edition right there.
Yeah, you're selling out secrets, and I don't like it. All right, next up in that same episode was Starship Troopers, which is the one that I had recommended. Director Paul Verhoeven and stars Dina Meyer and Casper Van Dien confirmed that Verhoeven and cinematographer Jost Vacano shot the co-ed shower scene in the nude themselves on a dare from Meyer. On the day of the shoot, the director had asked the cast to do a little fashion show without fashion so that they could get comfortable being naked. When the cast was reluctant to disrobe, Verhoeven asked them what the big deal was, to which Meyer responded, "Paul, if it's no big deal, why don't you do it?" Quite unexpectedly, Verhoeven got undressed, as well as Vacano, who had been raised in a nudist camp. After an initial shock, Van Dien reportedly yelled, "Oh God, Dina, why?" And a good laugh from the cast, the scene was filmed without problem.
Wow. Interesting.
I love it in parentheses. He yelled, "Oh God, why?"
Also, I feel like an inside Inception fun fact that he was raised in a nudist camp. Very interesting.
Literally an inside fact. Yeah. After that was episode 12, where we covered Scoob, the animated Scooby-Doo movie.
Best film.
That's an opinion. It's pretty awful. But that is the first animated Scooby-Doo movie to contain mild language.
Interesting. What mild language was it?
It doesn't say. It just says mild language. I'm sure there was like a hell or something in there. I don't know.
Interesting. Wow. Or
Also,
maybe a lot of crap. Maybe they said crap.
Maybe? It's also one of the first Scooby-Doo projects where Shaggy was not voiced by the actor who played him in the live-action ones.
Oh, sure.
Which was really cool. Actually, they consistently use that same actor. I forget the name off the top of my head, but
so that Shaggy is only 1/100th of the power of the real Shaggy.
He's not canonical. Next up was episode 12, another double feature. Back when we called them double features. I had recommended 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. For that, Richard Fleischer, the director, was surprised at being considered for the director's chair for the film, as he was the son of Disney's biggest competitor, Max Fleischer. He approached Walt Disney to inquire if Disney knew who he was. Disney told him that he was well aware of who he was and hired him because he thought he was the best man for the job. Richard Fleischer also asked his father if he minded having his son working for his rival, but Max Fleischer made no objection and even asked Richard to tell Disney that he thought he had made an excellent choice for director.
Wow. What a lovely story.
When people could be the bigger person and admit that it was a good choice.
Seriously.
I love that fact. That's great. Good Will Hunting was the other one. My most controversial movie opinion to date. I think.
Yeah.
That or apparently How to Train Your Dragon 3, which that was interesting in the YouTube comments. But Good Will Hunting, the lines in the scene when Sean talks about his late wife's farting antics were ad-libbed by Robin Williams. That is why Matt Damon was laughing so hard. If you watch the scene carefully, you can notice the camera shaking a bit, possibly due to the cameraman laughing as well.
Oh no!
There's another fact like that coming up for a different movie, but it's like I love it when they leave that stuff in because it makes it so much better.
Also, a fun fact for this episode: I think we just did episode 12 twice. Was that also episode 12?
Yeah, it was a double feature.
No, but I think we also said that episode 12 was Scooby-Doo.
No, Scooby was episode 10.
Ah, there you go. Correction.
Yes.
Episode 10.
In episode 13, we watched Netflix's exclusive Project Power with Jamie Foxx and Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Before seeing that Newt's power engulfs him in flames, the TV in his apartment is showing the Fireman stage from Mega Man 1.
That's pretty cool. A little bit of an Easter egg thing.
I think Newt is the Machine Gun Kelly character.
Yes, the one that burns. The drug dealer. Yeah.
But that's it for Project Power. Not a lot of facts on that one. All the Netflix movies have barely any facts, which is really interesting. By the way, these all come from IMDb.
Sure. I think they're all... That's because... And this is not a knock. There are some very good Netflix movies, but they're all very... level, I think. Like, in terms of, like, I don't think there's a lot of depth like there are to, like, Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Or, like... I don't think people are investing as much time in them.
Exactly. Yeah, it's made for an audience. Not that that's a bad thing. They're
Exactly.
not bad movies. But moving on, we made our first franchise fever episode with Indiana Jones, which is still our... no, actually, I was trying to think if Indiana Jones is our highest rated to date, or if it was... I think it's still Back to the Future. But Raiders of the Lost Ark in episode 15. During the filming in Tunisia, nearly everyone in the cast and crew got sick, except for director Steven Spielberg. It is thought that he avoided illness by eating only the food that he brought with him, which were a lot of cans of SpaghettiOs.
You know what though? That fits Spielberg's MO. That feels about right.
Honestly, I'd rather try a new culture's food than SpaghettiOs.
I just want you to remember. Oh, I completely agree. But
Yeah.
I just want everyone to imagine that the person that brought us hits such as E.T. and Super 8 is just behind camera, just absolutely shotgunning cans of SpaghettiOs. And guess what? He's the healthiest person on set.
To be fair, he did not direct Super 8, by the way. That was J.J. Abrams.
Oh, it was produced by
produced
Steven
it.
Spielberg. Yeah.
It felt like a Spielberg movie.
He
but-
passed his SpaghettiOs on. There were definitely SpaghettiOs on.
Take
set.
my can, young one. Speaking of Indiana Jones, that same episode we did Temple of Doom, which was the second movie. And this is one of my favorite facts of both of these episodes. While filming the whipping scene, the crew played a practical joke on Harrison Ford. While he was chained to the large stone, Barbara Streisand appeared, dressed in a leather dominatrix outfit. She proceeded to whip him, saying, "That's for Hanover Street, the worst movie I ever saw." She continued whipping him for Star Wars and for making all of that money. Carrie Fisher then burst onto the set and threw herself in front of Ford to protect him. And the director of Empire Strikes Back, Irvin Kershner, chided into director Steven Spielberg asking, "Is this how you run your movie sets?" This entire sequence was filmed and it exists somewhere.
Wow. I feel like that's in Spielberg's private collection for late nights when he's got his SpaghettiOs next to the candlelight and it's all really romantic and he puts on the video.
Well, he's still married to Kate Capshaw, who played I think it was Billy. She was the girl in that movie.
Yeah, but do you really think she's enjoying the SpaghettiO breath?
I don't know. If she's still with him, I'm guessing probably, or maybe
Also-
maybe he's upgraded to Chef Boyardee.
No,
We don't know.
But also, another fun fact about I think it was the one that we just talked about, but J.J. Abrams, who of course was like kind of under the wing of Steven Spielberg for a couple of them, he actually got his signature lens flare from the light hitting off the SpaghettiO can as Spielberg handed the baton.
He was like,
So that is
"Whoa."
why we have such prominent use of lens flare, because J.J. Abrams is just constantly remembering the best moment of his life.
I just imagine Spielberg like just chowing down on SpaghettiOs, going, "You need to find your signature thing," and then he hands him the can and sees the glint off the steel of the can. He's like, "There it is."
Yeah.
Next up in this franchise was The Last Crusade. As with the other Indiana Jones movies, Harrison Ford did many of his own stunts. According to stuntman Vic Armstrong, he had to pull Ford to one side and ask him to let him do some work because Ford was doing so much of the action himself. Armstrong later said if he wasn't such a great actor, he would have made a really great stuntman.
Well, I mean, yeah, basically, I could definitely see that. I don't know how they get paid on set. Do they get paid by stunt scene?
That's a great question. I don't know.
I'm wondering like why he begged for more work. Maybe just so he could be in the credits.
I thought I read somewhere it's paid per stunt, but
Oh, per stunt.
I don't know
Wow.
for sure though. But that's a great question. We'll have to find a
That's
stunt
rough.
person out there who wants to come on the podcast. That'd be awesome. If anyone
Yeah.
knows a stunt man or stunt woman or stunt person, let us know. The last film in that franchise is Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. When filming the scene where Indiana Jones drives a truck through a wall, things did not go as planned. Timed explosives were used, but one explosive did not go off and landed in the seat next to Harrison Ford.
Wow. That could have been the end right there.
Well, I mean, that man has crashed his plane so many times. I don't know how he hasn't seen, like, that
Wow.
probably, he just shook that off probably. He's like, "It's just dynamite." Throwing it out the truck.
Took a bite out of it.
This isn't SpaghettiOs, Steven! After that, we had episode 16 where we covered Tenet, which that was the first episode where we had our friends Cassidy and Griffin on the show. But, really cool fact for this movie, in addition to performing stunts backwards, which, by the way, Tenet has less VFX shots in it than your average TV show.
It's true. It was only like 100 and
It's like
something,
270 or something.
Yeah.
It's crazy. But in addition to doing all the stunts backwards, the main cast actually learned how to speak in reverse for their roles. Sir Kenneth Branagh not only learned how to speak backwards, but also had to do it with his character's Russian accent.
Wow.
That's some that's devotion.
Yeah.
Right there. In episode 17, we did a double feature with 2 fantasy movies. The first up was Pan's Labyrinth, which I believe was one of the first 100 perfect scores.
Yeah.
I give it a perfect score. I don't think you did, but for Pan's Labyrinth, the English subtitles were translated and written by Guillermo del Toro himself. He no longer trusts translators after having encountered problems with his previous submitted films.
Oh, and it's a plague with Netflix translations. If you're not watching in original language, translations are a disaster when they're auto-generated.
Yeah. I remember Squid Game got really pestered with that.
I feel like literally what happens is they have like an intern that they're literally like, does anyone speak Spanish? And then he's like, yeah, I do. And then he watches it and they're like, what does this mean? He's like, that means I don't know. And they literally like write, and the sentence could be like, I'm not aware of the predicament. But the subtitle ends up being, I don't know. And it's just like, you don't get the same feel of the movie at all.
Yeah. It's like, does anyone here know Spanish? I took a semester. You're hired. That same episode, we watched King Arthur, Legend of the Sword, which is a huge guilty pleasure film of mine, and I know you weren't too big a fan of it. Charlie Hunnam, though, who played King Arthur, promised that he would get into incredible shape for this film, even saying he was going to do 500 push-ups every day, as he wanted to look like one of those guys that do that. After filming concluded, Hunnam revealed that he did, in fact, do several hundred push-ups every day, with his personal record being 1,050 push-ups in a single day.
Holy cow!
He's pretty built in that movie, so
yeah.
That makes sense. Next up was episode 19. We had a musical double feature. With Mr. Holland's Opus being the first film that I had put forward. Composer Michael Kamen, who you might actually know is the composer for Band of Brothers, one of your favorite shows.
Nice.
He was so inspired by the story told in the film that he started a non-profit organization dedicated to providing musical instruments to underprivileged students.
Wow.
Which is very nice.
That is very nice. His magnum opus.
Mm-hmm. It can't be all Barbra Streisand and dominatrix facts on here. We got to get some uplifting ones here. But next up is Whiplash. Miles Teller, who has played the drums since he was 15, received some blisters on his hands due to the vigorous, unconventional style of jazz drumming. Some of his blood was on the drumsticks and the drum set as a result. So that was not fake.
Interesting. Well, I mean, we don't know if they're talking about that scene in particular.
Yeah, I mean,
he could have also bled, but it does seem very intentional for the movie. But that's really cool that he actually, that's him playing. That's very, very cool.
Yeah, apparently he's legitimately a good drum player, and so
nice.
One of the reasons why he was cast in the film. Also found out, apparently on the set of Top Gun Maverick, he almost died while filming. Don't know how.
What? Oh.
It was a clickbait-looking title, so I kind of skipped over it. So I don't know if that's true, but I saw that on there.
You really threw it out on a facts episode, just hearsay.
Hey, this isn't the Depp Heard trial. There's no hearsay here.
Congratulations, Johnny Depp. You deserve to win that.
In episode 20, we did the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise.
Johnny Depp.
Yeah, great transition.
Wow.
But the first one was Curse of the Black Pearl. Industrial Light and Magic, the ever-present visual effects company, the designers for the film scanned turkey jerky to create the effect of decomposing skin when the pirates turn into their skeletal forms.
Oh, interesting. I could see that texture and everything. I could see that.
I always worried I was cannibalistic, but it turned out it was just looking at turkey jerky that was making me hungry the whole time. So,
well, never mind. I don't want to say it.
For the second film, Dead Man's Chest, the director Gore Verbinski originally wanted Davy Jones to be Dutch, as he is the captain of the Dutchman. Bill Nye, however, responded, "I don't do Dutch, so I decided on Scottish."
Hey, there it is.
You gotta love when an actor has agency over things like that. Like, I can't do Dutch.
I'm
like, all right. The third film, At World's End, was the most expensive film ever made at that time, not adjusted for inflation. The budget ran to $300 million. That's more than the budget of all 3 Lord of the Rings films combined.
Wow.
And it says something, because 3
All
Lord
of it
of the
went to
Rings films
CGI.
were better than At World's End. Next up, Pirates 4, which was At World's End. While filming in London in October 2010, Johnny Depp received a letter from a local 9-year-old schoolgirl telling him that her classmates needed help to mutiny against her teachers. He turned up with almost no warning at the school in full Captain Jack Sparrow outfit, but advised against the mutiny.
Oh, but at least he showed up. That's cool.
Yeah. And the last one...
You gotta listen to your teacher.
Why is the rum gone? This is a school. In the last film, Dead Men Tell No Tales, because Will Turner is the captain of the Flying Dutchman now, he can only set foot on land once every 10 years, which we know that from the lore of the films. But what is interesting is that the 5th film was released exactly 10 years after the 3rd movie.
Wow, that's a really cool little fact. How fun.
Yeah. I remember reading through the facts of that movie, and I was like, that's not that interesting. And I was like, oh, wait. That's kind of cool. After that was episode 21, where we covered Stealth and Perfect Blue, which, 2 very different films. Started the trend of watching very different films in our doubles. But Stealth, the forgettable movie about the stealth fighter jets and the AI.
Forgettable? Not forgettable.
I forget that film exists, even though we covered it.
That's
That's
a
the
great
fun
movie.
fact. All right. I'm just kidding. The explosion that takes place in the Alaska airfield sequence used 500 gallons of gasoline. It was such a large explosion that NASA had to be notified in advance.
Wow.
Which,
Or else what were they going to do?
I don't know. It's not in space, so I don't know why they'd be concerned. Like, maybe the guys in the International Space Station are like, the end has begun, huh?
Yeah, what are they... What were they going to do? That's like I feel like that's mall security being like, you got to let me know if you're going to go into that store.
Gonna need to let me know if you're displaying any kind of paraphernalia out there.
You're like, I'm just going to walk out with this TV and you legally can't stop me.
Just let me know when you're leaving.
Yeah.
Bye. I got myself an LG. We also watched Perfect Blue that episode, which the film was originally conceived as a live-action feature film, but became an anime when several backers abruptly pulled out during pre-production.
Interesting. I think it fits better as an anime. I think it would have
I do too.
A little different had it been live action.
Especially since I found out it's based off of a manga.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I feel like every other adaptation we've gotten similar to that, like Attack on Titan movies have been terrible. Like all that, it's just tougher to do live action, whereas I feel like animation keeps at least enough of the core essence the same that you can get away with a little bit more.
But there is a very good American live-action remake of a Japanese anime film. Well, it's not strictly a remake. It was inspired by. So there's a Japanese film called Paprika, which is very similar in concept to Inception.
Yeah.
So, this is where I stopped keeping track of what episodes things came from, because I got lazy in writing my notes. The next film was The Devil All the Time, which had a lot of people in it. Did you know, though, that Chris Evans was originally cast as the deputy, but had to drop out of the film due to scheduling conflicts? His Marvel co-star Sebastian Stan took over the role.
Interesting. I feel like that would have fit also. It would have been a different vibe, for sure, but that would have been interesting.
It's just funny that when you can't get Cap, you can get Bucky.
Yeah.
Next up was Bone Tomahawk, a movie that... God, I still remember those. I actually really enjoyed that movie.
It's a great movie.
The cave set during the last act of the movie, where all the cannibals were, spoiler alert, was the same cave set used in Iron Man, where Tony Stark is held captive and escapes with the Iron Man suit.
Interesting. I would love to go back and watch the layout and see if you could match it up.
You probably couldn't tell, but, I mean, because lighting and, like, camera differences, color grading, but apparently it is, according to IMDb. Next up, Blazing Saddles, another perfect 100 score movie from me. My favorite comedy movie of all time, next to Monty Python and the Holy Grail. When the film was first screened for Warner Brothers executives, almost none of them laughed. And the movie looked to be a disaster that the studio would not release. However, Mel Brooks quickly set up a subsequent screening for the studio's employees. When those regular folks laughed uproariously throughout the movie, Warner Brothers finally agreed to take a chance on releasing it.
Nice. What a good play.
And it was a success, so shows that Warner Brothers continues to have issues with their executives. Next up is Borat, subsequent movie film. We did cover the sequel to Borat. We still haven't covered the first one on the podcast. No. But Tutar, who was played by... I didn't write her name down. Maria Bakalova, who was nominated for an Oscar for the film. That's a good fun fact, too. Tutar is actually speaking Bulgarian, her native language, and Borat seems to understand her perfectly. Meanwhile, Borat's sons, Dr. Yemek and the Kazakh premier, are played by Romanian actors who say their lines in Romanian and Nursultan. And Nursultan Tulukabai is, I think I'm saying that correctly, is played by a Croatian actor who says his lines in Croatian. This is a recurring joke from the first Borat movie, where Borat speaks Hebrew while his producer speaks Armenian, but they seemingly understand each other. This satirizes that American audiences can't notice the differences in foreign languages.
I had no clue.
Exactly. We played right into their hands.
That's a really funny bit that's like not even an overt bit. Like just to know that it's in there, that's very funny.
It's hysterical. Also, there was another fact too that when he stays with the two like redneck type guys,
yeah,
he actually stayed with them for like 5 weeks and did not drop character once.
So when they're getting fed up with them and stuff,
they're actually getting fed up with them. It's pretty crazy.
That's awesome.
Next up was a double feature. I remembered this one where we did 2 alien abduction films. We did Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which one of my favorite sci-fi movies ever. That became one of the first films to have a special edition director's cut made when Steven Spielberg wanted to improve his vision.
Interesting.
You're welcome, Snyder Cut fans. A better director did it first. Next was The Fourth Kind, which we did that episode. Kind of nice to go from Third Kind to Fourth Kind. Not a lot of fun facts about The Fourth Kind. A lot of them were talking about how the movie was falsely marketed and stuff like that. But the real Nome, Alaska, which is where the film takes place, is 51% Native Alaskan. But there are no indigenous characters in the film at all.
Yep, they completely outsourced everybody.
They whitewashed the heck out of it.
Yeah.
So, and it doesn't even look like Nome either from the pictures that I've seen.
No. They chose very specific shots.
Yeah, it's Nome, Alaska, Oregon.
Yeah.
Next up was a Christmas double feature that we did. This is our first holiday episode ever where we each chose our favorite holiday film. I selected, of course, the best holiday film of all time, Die Hard, and it is a Christmas movie. Whoever says otherwise is wrong. Only a couple of the actors in Die Hard who played the German terrorists were actually German. And only a couple more that could only speak broken German. The actors were all cast for their menacing appearances rather than their nationality. 9 of the 12 were over 6 feet tall.
Wow.
Talk about typecasting.
Yeah, seriously. Hey, but if you fit the role, then there you go.
Like, you look like an evil son of a bitch. Come on in. Next up was your pick, A Christmas Carol, the 1999 version with Patrick Stewart. During the 1990s, Sir Patrick Stewart wrote and starred in a one-man play based on A Christmas Carol, performing it in various places in the United States and in the United Kingdom. He performed it again for the survivors and victims' families of 9/11 and again in 2005. In the play, he performed over 40 different characters.
Wow. I would be super fascinated to see those scenes because there's somewhere, like they're all, like it's a big family talking to each other. I would be fascinated to see him do that.
Oh, yes, Papa.
And also, he seems like the only actor that's still, like, thespian enough to, like, be like, ooh, I'm going to go do a one-man show in select theaters. Like, that just feels like a Sir Patrick Stewart thing. Oh, and you best believe he had a turtleneck. There's no doubt in my mind. Black turtleneck, for sure.
Better believe it. Next up, we did Mulan, the 2020 version of the film. Filming during the Imperial City battle was held up for several days after the trained eagle accidentally flew into the filming crew's helicopter rotors.
That's pretty terrible news.
Yep, unfortunately. There weren't a
Doesn't
lot
say
of...
he died, though.
Yeah, it doesn't say. It's
It's
ambiguous enough.
He was in the ER for a bit, and then they got him back on set. Faster recovery than most famous actors.
The Eagle Room is where they put him.
Ah, ER.
Or the EER, the Eagle Emergency Room.
And you best believe he was only drinking Eagle Rare whiskey.
There you go. I don't know how that does for the healing process, but
wonders.
Oh, really?
Wonders.
I gotta get me some then. Next up, we covered Sound of Metal, which was one of my favorite movies of 2020. Love that film. While Paul Raci, who plays Joe, the founder of the deaf rehab facility, isn't actually deaf, both of his parents were. He is a prominent figure in the deaf community as a coda and a member of Hands of Doom, a band that performs in American Sign Language.
Interesting. Very cool.
That is that for an American Sign Language band, the fact that it's called Hands of Doom is incredible. Alrighty, next up we did one of our last double features of 2020 we watched Soul and Wonder Woman 1984. In Soul, at around 1 hour into the film, one of the ads on the subway is for Brang, the startup company that Riley's dad moved to San Francisco for in Inside Out.
I've been saying this on the podcast for years. Inside Out is the sequel to Soul. And if you don't believe me, you're wrong.
That Soul's the sequel to Inside Out, you mean?
No.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. Well, no,
Yes,
that doesn't make sense timeline-wise, though, because if that company, because it's a startup company, existed in Soul, then Soul would be the sequel to Inside Out, because Inside Out, it was a startup company that they moved to San Francisco for.
Yes, you can work at a startup after it started.
Yeah, but
he got the job
13 years or whatever after? That's not a startup company anymore.
Well, they said it's the startup that he gets the job for. They never say it's a startup.
It's in the same world. Okay, it's in the
sequel.
It's in the same universe.
It's a sequel.
Next up, Wonder Woman 1984. Director Patty Jenkins picked the 80s as the film's setting because she saw it as the height of Western civilization and society, and so it offers the opportunity to explore how Wonder Woman would deal with the types of villains that come from that era.
Well, terrible. Thanks for that.
Yeah, unfortunately. I still say
horrific film.
The fact that it was the same crew as the first movie is embarrassing.
Yeah.
Next up, we did Salt with Angelina Jolie. There is a Star Trek Easter egg in the film.
Oh.
At the beginning of the movie, Salt is talking to Ted, where Salt asks if she was ever that young, reference to a new FBI agent, and Ted says, younger. This is an exact replica conversation between Kirk and Chekhov, who was a Russian officer in Star Trek Generations.
Interesting.
So an American and a Russian, an American and a Russian.
Yeah, nice.
Next up was Underwater from one of your favorite directors, William Eubank. So the actors wore airtight suits for the underwater scenes, making it difficult to hear the director's commands. Each suit weighed approximately 140 pounds.
Nice.
Which is super heavy.
But I feel like that adds all the authenticity to the movements and everything. It's a very detailed, technical movie. It's very, very good.
Absolutely. Yeah. Next up was The Little Things, which was a new release film early in 2021. There were 3 directors before it eventually went to the actual director. I don't remember what his name is, unfortunately. I'm sorry. The 3 directors were Steven Spielberg, Clint Eastwood, and Danny DeVito. When Danny DeVito was considering directing the film, it is believed that he also would have starred as Albert Sparma, the role that Jared Leto played.
So that would have been a different film.
A
very different film. It would have been different under all three of those directors. And I think there might be a slight reason why they all passed.
Exactly. Yeah. Because it just wasn't that interesting of a film, unfortunately.
Well, they really missed. They just needed to make the climax more. It totally falls flat.
Yeah. There are times when it feels a little bit of a ripoff of 7, too, especially that last sequence. Definitely.
Yeah.
Next up, Lilo and Stitch. And no, we're not going over the 9/11 thing that happened in that movie, where the plane chase was originally supposed to be going through towers in Hawaii. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're not going over that. Originally, well, yeah, I guess so. Originally, Stitch was going to be an intergalactic gangster, and the Dr. Jumba was going to be a disgruntled member of his gang who was left behind during a heist and was going after him as revenge. And the other members of the gang would have been the ones who came to get him in the third act. The filmmakers felt that Stitch was more sympathetic when the audience thought of him as a younger, and so was changed from a hardened criminal to a genetic experiment, and Jumba became the scientist who created him.
That would have been... I want
crazy.
So bad. That sounds awesome.
I know. Like, that he's just a proper villain and then becomes a house pet. Like,
that
so
is
crazy.
Awesome.
Oh my gosh. That same episode, we did also watch one of the worst films that we've reviewed on the podcast, which was Righteous Kill. And we're not the only ones that think so. Robert De Niro and Al Pacino have said in interviews that they did not feel proud of the final result of Righteous Kill. They even stated feeling unworthy of their fans' appreciation during the premiere, with Pacino going as far as saying that it is a movie they are both trying to forget. Therefore, both actors agreed that the next project they collaborated in together would be one to be proud of. 11 years later, they were finally very proud and pleased with their next collaboration, Martin Scorsese's The Irishman.
Wow.
So we're not the only ones.
Wow, they hated it. Nice.
Also, I thought there was another fact that said that the really weird sexual romance between Carla Gugino and Robert De Niro in that film was predated by another film they started together where Carla played his daughter.
Nice. Lovely to hear.
Great relationship change through films. Next up was we went into one of our favorite franchises, you and me, which was the Alien franchise. Mm-hmm. We both love these films, and the universe, a lot. The first Alien film. This one has some... I've already cursed during this episode, but warning on some language here. During early development, Dan O'Bannon and Ronald Shusett ran into a writing impasse while trying to work out how the alien would get aboard the ship. Shusett came up with the idea that the alien fucks one of them, which was eventually developed into the facehugger concept. This method of reproduction via implantation was deliberately intended to invoke images of male rape and impregnation, so both writers were adamant that the facehugger victim be a man. Firstly, because they wanted to avoid the horror cliche of women being depicted as the first easy target. Secondly, because they felt that making a female the casualty of a symbolic rape felt inappropriate. And thirdly, to make the male viewers feel more uncomfortable with this reversal of gender conventions.
Interesting. I definitely could get all those vibes. Yeah.
The fact that was considered back in the 70s, is awesome.
They nailed it.
Which, I mean, originally, like, the alien creature was created by H.R. Geiger, who's one of my favorite artists. And a lot of his art is very sexual in nature. So from the beginning, the alien creature was supposed to be very sexual. The original film was supposed to be much more sexual as well. But they did tone it down, which I would have liked to have seen the more darker version of the film, but it's still pretty dark, so it definitely still holds up.
I definitely think so.
In Aliens, the follow-up, which many say that's better, some say Alien 1's better. I would say they're both pretty equal. In Aliens, Bill Paxton continuously apologized to Carrie Henn, who played Newt, throughout filming, every time that he had to swear in front of her. Carrie later admitted that she didn't mind, mainly because she didn't know what any of the words meant.
Nice. What an innocent person.
Not saying curse in front of your kids and, like, child family members or friends' kids or anything, but it's just a cute little story.
Yeah.
Next up, Alien 3, which we had a reversal on this one. I thought Resurrection was worse than 3, and you thought Resurrection was better than 3.
Yep.
But this fact is pretty interesting. So, the film's production process was so chaotic and its reception by fans and critics so unfavorable that it nearly ended David Fincher's career before he even had a chance to gain momentum as a director. But two things ended up saving Fincher from permanent movie jail. The first thing was that Sigourney Weaver publicly and often angrily sided with Fincher against 20th Century Fox, telling journalists that the studio had made decisions that resulted in an impossible situation for the young director, and that he would have an excellent career if given further chances. The other thing was that producer Arnold Kopelson knew and didn't respect the management at Fox, and that was part of the process where he ultimately offered Fincher a new project a few years later. That project was Seven, and its massive success reignited Fincher's career, making him one of the most respected directors of his time.
Wow.
Talk about a comeback story.
Talk about a whirlwind. Yeah, that is wild.
Absolutely crazy. And then Alien Resurrection is the fourth film in the franchise. Sigourney Weaver originally refused to do a fourth Alien film. When asked why she changed her mind, she said, "They basically drove a dump truck full of money to my house."
Yeah, that's the one where she shaves her head, right?
That was the third one. The fourth one is where she's like the hybrid with the alien creature, and she's super like animalistic and like sexual for no reason.
Yeah, because I know that for the third one, she was also really hesitant, and then they asked her, she agreed to do it, and then they said, are you willing to shave your head for the film? And she just immediately, on the phone with her agent, just looked at her agent and said, "Yeah, I don't know, how much does it cost to shave my head?" And I forget the number, they were like, $3 million, and the studio was like, done. Like, just added on millions.
Gotta love it.
She's very good at working the business.
I love
Always
Sigourney
has
Weaver.
been. Yeah, she's really good at it.
Next up was Prometheus in the film's timeline. And this is one of my favorite instances ever where there is a lost scene for this movie that would have made it so much more interesting, but they left it on the cutting room floor. Ridley Scott originally suggested that an engineer was sent to Earth to stop humanity's increasing aggression, but was crucified. The implication being that it was Jesus Christ. He felt that this would be too obvious a religious allegory for the film. You don't say!
Wow, that would have been interesting.
It would have been so much cooler to have that, to like, I don't know. It's just interesting to me. The last film that we covered in that franchise was Alien Covenant. Earlier drafts of the script had the incoming transmission to be a prayer, but the filmmakers felt that it was too corny, so they changed it to a John Denver song, which was Country Roads.
Which I think I like. I think that's fun.
I think it's definitely like familiar. They never really say how David had Country Roads or access to it. I think the prayer would have been more ominous and spooky, but the Country Roads fit the film, I thought.
Yeah, but I also think, it might have been more spooky for the film, but imagine being out in deep space and hearing an Earth song.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, if you're on the ship, that would be the wildest thing. Like, a prayer, especially in another language or something else, could be like, oh, like, there's life, but hearing something from Earth would make no sense.
And to be fair, you're much more likely to go out and check something out if they're playing Country Roads as opposed
to... Take me home, baby!
Take me home. Next up, we had a double feature with our guest, Miniac, who loved having Miniac on. I should reach out to him again. But he recommended that we watch Possessor, which is by the son of David Cronenberg. I forget his son's name, unfortunately.
It's a good movie.
It was very, very good. Most of the special effects in the film were done practically, with an effort to use as little VFX work as possible. The hallucination scenes effects in particular were done in camera. Cronenberg credits his effects specialists Dan Martin and Derek Liscombe and his longtime cinematographer Kareem Hussain for being able to pull off convincing visuals with a minimum amount of CGI.
Nice.
Yeah, I remember especially like the melting stuff was really weird looking. Speaking of Cronenberg, his father, David Cronenberg, who is a legend in the film industry, is releasing his new film, Crimes of the Future, which I am very much looking forward to watching.
Interesting, yeah. Another fun fact, another inside baseball fact coming from Adrian is for that episode, for that movie in particular, we actually recorded the entire episode and then found out that Garrett did not hit record. And we actually had to go back and re-record the entire episode. So thank you, Miniac, for sticking with us on that through that. But that was a very fun time.
I had put that out of my head, and you just brought it flooding back in. Yeah. Oh, man. Thank you for that.
It's a great episode.
That same episode, we also watched The Lodge, which was our recommendation. Cult leader Aaron Marshall, who was the father of Grace Marshall, the main character, is played by actress Riley Keough, her real-life father, Danny Keough. So the actor's father played the character's father.
Nice.
Very cool.
Very fun.
Next up was Raya and the Last Dragon. We actually covered that on the podcast. Raya is the third Disney princess to be a wholly original character, not based on any prior character from a fairy tale or legend, after Merida and Moana. They also do not have love interests, unlike the other Disney princess characters. So the only three original characters don't have romantic interests. However, Kelly Marie Tran, who played Raya, did make an assertion that Namari, who was that rival tribe friend that betrayed her, is in fact her love interest. So, interesting tidbit there. Yeah. Next up, one of the more disappointing releases of 2021, Zack Snyder's Justice League. When exhuming Superman, Barry refers to Diana as Wonder Woman. This is the first time that name is spoken in a DCEU film.
Interesting.
Everyone else just called her Diana. So, kind of an interesting fact.
Yeah.
Next up.
Nice.
Sorry, I didn't mean to speak over you. Next up is Robots. One of your favorite movies, I think.
I still love it. Don't even get me started.
Did you know, though, that a special rendering tool was created specifically to place the pips on every domino in Big Weld's workshop?
Really?
Yeah.
That I don't know why, but that reminds me of the Lord of the Rings software for the big battle.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's specifically designed, but this one was for divots.
But the Lord of the Rings software is still used to this day.
Absolutely. Well, so is the
I don't know of any dominoes.
Absolutely it is. Absolutely it is. Are you joking?
They're like, we put every grain of sand in something. I don't know. That same episode, we covered Space Jam, which thankfully is better than the second one.
It's a great movie. The original is great.
Nostalgic for people who watched it, I would assume, back in the day. I never did, unfortunately, so I just thought it was okay. But toward the end of the basketball game, Daffy asks Bill Murray, exactly how did you get here? To which Bill responds, the producer is a friend of mine, referring to the producer of the film, Ivan Reitman, who was the director of Ghostbusters, starring Bill Murray. Also,
I think we
Stripes.
talked about that during the episode when we were reviewing it.
We may have. There's a couple of these that I had to go through because we looked at trivia and fun facts during some of our older episodes. I had to find stuff we didn't cover, but only got a couple left before we hit the last episode for this one. So this was the last of the first 50 episodes where we did a franchise episode, and that was Back to the Future, which is
that was a good one.
I checked, that is our highest rated franchise ever. Back to the Future. In 2010, during a cast reunion, Michael J. Fox said that strangers still call him McFly constantly. Fox said the most remarkable instance of this was when he was in a remote jungle in the South Asian country Bhutan, located between China and India in the eastern Himalayas. A group of Buddhist monks passed him by, and one of them looked at Fox and said, "Marty McFly!"
Wow.
How cool is that?
Yeah, that's very cool.
In the second film, Back to the Future Part 2, according to Michael J. Fox, again, he found out that there was going to be a sequel to Back to the Future when he watched the VHS version of the first film, and the words "to be continued" were added at the end. He immediately called his agent to make sure he was going to be in the sequel.
He's like, excuse me?
What does this mean? And then finally, for Back to the Future Part 3, this is the only fun fact I could find. Marty uses a Frisbee's pie plate to knock a gun out of Mad Dog's hand. In 1871, the Frisbee Pie Company started in Connecticut. Their pie pans were thrown on the campus of Yale, and this eventually led to the invention of Frisbees.
Wow.
So if you ever wonder why a Frisbee kind of looks like a dish, that's why.
Or maybe a plate. Yeah. Like, literally exactly that.
Exactly. Yeah. Then the last episode we did was a double feature. We did Singing in the Rain and Overlord. Singing in the Rain. The last shot of the Good Morning sequence, in the Good Morning, with Don,
Nailed
Kathy, and Cosmo falling over the couch, where they kind of sat on it and then...
Yeah, one of the best
over.
scenes, yeah.
It took 40 takes.
Really?
Yeah. There was also another fun fact that was a little too depressing, but I'll share it anyway. So, the Make 'Em Laugh sequence, which is one of my favorite musical numbers in any film.
It's great.
The actor who played Gene Kelly's friend, I can't remember his name right now, was sick at the time and had a fever of 103 and did the entire dance routine. They then later found out that the footage was corrupted and had to redo the entire thing.
What a chore.
There's also a lot of facts about Gene Kelly being like a tyrant on set. Like, he demanded perfection. So it was really interesting to kind of read some of that.
Peel back the veil.
Yeah, Hollywood was a bit of a different place back in the day.
Yeah.
But the last film for today is Overlord, the World War II horror zombie movie that should have been a Cloverfield film. Would have made the franchise probably better as a whole.
It would have opened it up. It would have made it all make a little more sense.
And more different.
Yeah.
Yeah. The movie did feature more practical effects rather than the standard CGI effects most movies use. This was done to get a better reaction from the actors involved in the scenes where something gruesome would happen.
Nice.
Which makes sense. Honest reactions to honest things.
I mean, that goes all the way back to like Blair Witch Project. Like, let's just get real reactions. That's what people love.
Or Alien.
Yeah,
the chest burster sequence. Yeah, that was real reactions. They actually killed John Hurt and got an alien to come out of him. But that's going to be the last movie that we cover for today. Oh boy, that was 7 pages of a Google document. Ooh. That was a book we just read through. Next week's is probably going to be a little bit longer. We did a lot more franchises during the back 50 episodes of our first 100. So just be aware of that. But this was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's fun to go back and revisit everything and, one, just go through all the movies that we've seen. But two, just hear some fun facts, because we don't always just go through the trivia. So that's really fun. Yeah, I love this.
Exactly, and hopefully you guys found it out fun too. Let us know what you think below. If you have any more fun facts about these films, or again, if you want to see something for us to cover, put it down below in a comment, suggestion somewhere. I don't know. We don't have a box or anything, so the internet works just as good.
Yeah.
But Adrian, if anyone wants to find us online or follow us or anything like that, where can they do that?
At the Drive Back Podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe, hit the bell, and hit the like button. We post every Monday, but we also here on YouTube, we post like exclusive stuff, like tier lists, or we're planning on doing a bunch of like movie collections and all that good stuff. So that's going to be all exclusive to YouTube. The Drive Back Podcast on any podcasting app. We love those 5-star reviews. You'll get a shout out. But anywhere you listen, we're there. And then on Instagram, working on some content, and you can find us at the Drive Back Podcast. So Drive Back Podcast, anywhere you want it.
That is absolutely correct. Next week, as we said, we're going to have part 2 of this. We're looking at episodes 50 through 99. So it's a good chance to go back and listen through some of those older episodes. Highly recommend the Poseidon episode. That one was so much fun to record.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. We will see you all next week here on The Drive Back. We love you so much. And again, see you next time. Thank you for listening to this episode of The Drive Back. Make sure to be on the lookout for new episodes every Monday, and make sure to follow us on social media.